please.
What kind of a deal would you be prepared to enter into in the event of a hung parliament?
What kind of deal would you be prepared to enter into in the event of a hung parliament? And before I ask for the first statement, I should state the obvious, Ed Miliband, which is, of course, you are aiming for an overall majority. So save us that bit. And,
go on.
And answer the question.
Go on. Let me just explain briefly what I want on overall majority. Look, I think this is important. You know, we put a manifesto before the British people. You get to decide in 3 weeks' time which is the government of this country. I think, frankly, this coalition government has become an excuse for broken promises. Nick Clegg broke his promises on tuition fees. David Cameron broke his promise on VAT. Now, what I want is a majority government to implement my manifesto. To run this country again for working people, not for the richest and most powerful, to raise the minimum wage to £8 an hour, to ban those exploitative zero-hours contracts, to have a mansion tax for the NHS, clamp down on tax avoidance and have more doctors and nurses. And look, you know, on this question of what happens after the election, I've got an old-fashioned view. Let the people decide on May the 7th. But I want a majority Labour government because I think it's the best thing for the country.
Nigel Farage.
I think the most important constitutional question this country faces is whether it's an independent, self-governing nation or not. And it's interesting to note that even the nationalists believe in being members of the EU, therefore they don't actually believe in true independence. We can't be an independent state and be part of a European Union. My view is we should be outside of that. My view is we should govern ourselves. My view is we should be self-confident and reach out to the world. So for me, if UKIP is in a position of influence in the next Parliament, we would want the British people to have a full, free and fair referendum so they can decide whether we have a trade deal with the EU or continued membership of the European Union. And it's a mystery to me that the Labour Party, which used to be the party that actually believed that the EU would be bad for Britain, now won't even give the British people a referendum. I'm astonished by that, but that's what I believe is the most important thing UKIP in Parliament could fight for.
Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, the most important deal I want to do on the 7th of May is with the Scottish people so that we can make Scotland's voice heard loudly and clearly in Westminster. I then want to see the back of the Tories. I will never, ever do a deal with the Tories. Let me make that crystal clear. The polls will show that Ed isn't strong enough to get rid of the Tories on his own. So I will work with Labour, with Leanne, with Natalie, so that together we can get rid of the Tories. But what I'd say to Ed is I want Ed to replace the Tories with something different and something better, something more progressive, because progressive change is what the country is crying out for. So that's my offer to Ed Miliband. If he's prepared to be better than the Tories, then I'm prepared to work with him to allow him to replace the Tories, which I think is what many people want to see.
Leanne Wood.
Well, Plaid Cymru wants to end austerity. We want to rebalance power and wealth throughout these islands. We want to invest in job creation. We want to end Trident renewal, introduce a living wage, end zero-hours contracts. But most importantly, we want to bring an end to this Tory government with its ideological-driven cuts. And we can work together, as progressives here on this stage can work together in order to achieve that. We can have strong public services. We can have a strong economy with a future for our young people. And we can also get a strong deal for Wales. There is no longer any need for us to continue with a third-rate devolution settlement. Like Nicola, I will not prop up a Conservative government, but I will also not prop up a Labour government hell-bent on implementing Tory policies. We can have an alternative.
Natalie Bennett.
First of all, to be very clear also, we would do nothing to prop up a Tory government in any way at all. But what voters are increasingly doing is looking towards voting Green. In the last election in 2010, about 1 in 100 people voted Green. The polls are showing that at least 1 in 20, and maybe many more, will vote for the kind of policies we're putting forward, for the fair economy, for a publicly owned and run NHS in which the profit motive has no place, and for tackling the pressing issue of climate change that yet again we have not heard any other person mention on this panel tonight. A strong group of Green MPs can build on the brilliant work of Caroline Lucas. We are prepared to work with Ed on a vote-by-vote basis, but as Leanne and Nicola have said, what we need is a much stronger alternative to the Tories, and sadly that's not what Labour is offering.